Welcome back to Connect and Transform. We're continuing this sub-project of graphing SVGs. This is a new file that's intended to just produce pie or donut charts. So today we're going to do the work to produce a sample donut chart. And the idea is basically we're just going to create a new circle and just hide the center portion of the pie chart. So it will appear as a ring or a donut. And I'm noticing that this is a numeric value. Obviously it worked when it was quoted, but I'm just going to remove the quotes there. So first I'm going to copy this because this was an example of creating a circle. So I'm going to use that as a template for creating our donut. Now I know that our donut is not going to need a class name, and our donut is not going to need any of the stroke attributes. For the purpose of demonstration to start with, I'm going to say opacity 1. For the fill, we're going to refer to a radial gradient that we're going to create. So we're going to call that donut radial gradient. We are going to produce it around the origin point 0, 0, so that's fine. We'll come back to the radius in a moment. And for our ID, we're just going to call it donut. So we're going to need an additional constant here, and our constant, we'll call it donut coverage %. And the idea is that it's some percentage value. For now, I'll just say 50. So the idea would be that if it's a 0, then we'd basically have no donut circle, no donut overlay at all. And if it's 100, it would completely cover the entire pie chart. So let's do the radius. So that's going to be our donut coverage % divided by 100 times the diameter divided by 2. And then in my testing, when I had two circles of exactly the same radius, one over the other, I could sometimes see a fraction of a pixel's worth of the circle that was underneath poking out. So I'm adding 1 at the end just to make that not be an issue. So let me go ahead. Oh, we can't quite test it yet. Let's actually, before we create that radial gradient, let's just say that the circle will be white. So I'll save that and refresh. Okay, so now you get an idea of what it is that we're doing. So if I change the coverage % to 0, then it shrinks down to a radius 1 circle. There is technically a tiny white circle there just because of this +1. So if we didn't want that when doing a regular pie chart, then I would just skip this code entirely. And then alternatively, if I say 100, then it covers the entire chart. Actually, let me change this to a very light gray. Okay, so there we see that's coverage 100. If I did 90, there you go. So that's showing like a really thin ring. And if I do 70, that's probably more of like a fatter donut look. So this is generally what we're doing. So let's get rid of this light gray color. And we're going to reference donut radial gradient, which we now need to produce. So let's go up here between our style and script tags just because it's convenient. We'll add a definitions tag. And then we're going to add a radial gradient. We're going to give our radial gradient an ID, which I've copied from the code below. Make sure to close our tag properly. And then we're going to have a number of stop elements, which will have offsets. So offset, and that's going to be some %. And then we'll have a stop color and a stop opacity. I'm going to copy that a few times. I like to always include 0 and 100. Technically, you don't need to because they're implied, but I think it just makes it extra obvious what's happening. Okay, so we're going to have stop points at 94, 95, and 97%. So from 0 to 94, our color is just going to be white. And then from 94 to 95, we're going to shift from white to a pure black. And for all of these, the opacity is going to be 1. Now from 95 to 97%, we're going to shift from opacity 1 to opacity 0.7, and we're going to stay there all the way to the edge of the radial gradient. We're also going to transition from pure black to a dark gray. So again, technically, I did not need to include this line or this line, but I like to anyway. So we'll save that. Let's go over here and refresh. And so now we see this is our radial gradient. And so now we have a loading animation for our main graphics, but we don't have a loading animation yet for the donut. So let's do that. I'm going to copy this, paste it there. So we're going to select the ID donut, and we're going to be setting an attribute. We're going to be setting opacity, and we're going to be setting it to 1, and we're going to change our default opacity to 0.75. And then we'll keep it at 10 milliseconds so that it basically runs immediately upon loading the page. So we'll save that and refresh. Now look at the very center of this white line here. Notice that at the beginning we can see through it, but by the end of the loading animation it's fully opaque. That's because we're going from its default opacity of less than 1, 0.75, and then it's slowly transitioning to 1. Recall that in our CSS, we're defining a number of transitions, so the all condition, stroke width, opacity, and visibility. So there we have it. We have loading animations for both pie and donut varieties, and we now have pie and donut varieties. Now, of course, we still have to link this up in the code. So for example, our graph data might contain a new element called type, and type might either allow or disallow different portions of the code to run. So like the selected portion at the bottom is all related to donut specifically. There'd be no reason to run it for a regular pie chart. So that pretty much does it for this video. In the future, we might have some sort of text representation in the center here. We might extend the canvas off to the right, and we might show series labels like text labels and color boxes, similar to the other project where if we hover over them, it would select the corresponding series and then maybe show some sort of percentage as text or something here in the donut, if it's a donut variety. But I think that will do it for this video. Thanks for watching.